Hi, this is Simon Obsdale and welcome to another tutorial for Blender. And this is part 3 of a multi-part tutorial in which we take a look at how I went about creating this steampunk fish scene. And in each part we'll be taking a look at a different component of the build. So let's get into it. So this is where we left it last time around, where we'd built our base fin, and I'm going to do some very quick renaming and tidying up to make the outliner a bit less messy. And we can start now on the main body. And the reason I kind of got you to do these other two components is because they're going to be good preparation for this slightly more challenging task. So let's just turn off the visibility of the tail and the base fin. What we're going to do obviously is make a new plane to start us off. So add, mesh and plane. And as before, we're going to rotate it through 90 degrees on X. And then we're going to come into edit mode and we're going to right click and subdivide. And then let's add our usual subdivision surface. Let's crank the viewport levels up to 2 so it's a little bit easier to see. And then with the move tool selected, let's just very roughly rough out the shape. And you'll be able to do this very quickly because of the practice you've already put in. So then what we're going to do is come into faces mode, select these faces here, select the inset faces tool, insert those faces a bit, it doesn't matter how much, and then X to delete and faces, which leaves us with this hole in the middle. And let's come back into vertices mode, and now we can move these vertices with the move tool selected. We can move them so they define this inner circle here, like so. As I say, don't spend too much time on this because we are now going to break it. So let's just turn on X-ray mode. That's Alt-Z is the shortcut for that. And the really tricky thing here is modeling these lips because they kind of go against the kind of whole logic of how we've cut this model. And as before, what we're going to be doing is loop cuts that we're then going to extrude. But you can see the difficulty of making loop cuts that are actually going to follow the lips. So the first thing we need to do, as I say, is break it. So I'm going to take these and I'm just going to move them well out of the way. And I'm also going to take this one here and move it out of the way as well, long way out like that. Because what I want to be able to do is to put 3 loop cuts into this section here. So let's select the loop cut tool, add 1 and bump the number up to 3 like that. And the reason I'm going for 3 is I want 1 to define the top edge of the lips, 1 to define the middle, and 1 to define the bottom. And as you can see, they're actually not in a terribly good place at the moment. And that's why we made ourselves some space to try and get them where we want them. So first of all, I'm just going to kind of move them all over like this, these ends here. So they're off this end of the mouth, right off the end like that. Maybe take all of these. And as I say, we're not worried about breaking our model at this point. We just want to get these loops into some sort of shape that we can actually start working with them. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use the knife tool to get us started on this end here. So let's select the knife tool and just quickly swipe down like that and then press enter. And now we've got some vertices there that we can work with. So switch back into the move tool. You can see now life is a little bit easier here because we can actually define the corners of the mouth much more easily. So we can just put these where we want them. Bring this one up like this. So that's already better. So then we need to address the other end, which is quite a bit more complicated. Again, we just kind of need to move these as close as we can to where we want them to be, not worrying about breaking anything. We just kind of want to get them much closer to their ideal position. And again, we're going to use the knife tool and we're going to swipe down through here like this and enter. And then we come back into the move tool again. You can see we can start to do better with this middle here. We can just move these points. And this is good. And we need to do one more knife cut here. But first of all, I'm just going to move this one up quite a bit so we can get a little bit more sort of space to do what we want to do. So again, with the knife tool, we want to cut down through all of them like that. Enter, come back into the move tool. And so now I'm going to sort of move this to sort of roughly here. line these up roughly at this point. And then it's much easier. Now we've done all this, I can move all these points that I've had to drag all the way over here. I can move them back to where I want them to be. So let's just start with this actually and just tidy this up. Tidy that up like that. A little bit of tidying here. Actually should be working on this end. We can come back to this later on. Let's grab this one and it can come all the way back to here. This one to here. This one, remembering it's the center of our lips, it can come to here. This one can come to there, the bottom of the lips. And we can bring this one up a little bit. So that's pretty good. And let's just sort this out down here. Again, I'm going to go whiz through this. You should be able to do this by now. Try to get a nice sort of smooth flow to these points. So this is pretty good. Now, the thing is, it does get a little bit awkward again in this corner down here. And there are lots of different strategies we could adopt. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these 4 vertices like that. And I'm going to hit F to fill them in like so. We might come in and do a little bit of editing here, depending on how we feel later on. But I think we're now in a really good shape to allow us to extrude these lips. So you remember how we do it. We'll go into faces mode. Let's turn off X-ray mode because it gets in the way of everything. So we want to grab this face, Control select that one, E for the extrude tool and 0.1 for the distance. Select this one, Control select that one, E and 0.1. And that was pretty easy. Now we'd actually sorted out those faces to extrude. Now, in the process of trying to get these extrusions to work, I've committed a cardinal sin, and that's to create n-gons. So we've got here a 5-sided shape, and down here where I rushed to join what I thought were 4 vertices, I've actually joined 5. So we really shouldn't be doing that. We should always try to have quads or triangles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the knife tool and vertices mode, and I'm going to cut from here to here, and that's going to, as you see, create a quad there and a triangle there. Meanwhile, down here, I think the solution might just simply be to merge these 2 vertices here. So you remember M for the merge tool and enter to select at center. So now we've got a quad there, 2 tris and another quad there. We've also unfortunately got a 5-sided n-gon here as well. And I think probably just the simplest thing is to cut it here with the knife tool again. So cut to there. And often what you'll find is that it makes a new vertex very close. So it's often quite a good idea to just go in, if you're at all uncertain, and just merge what you think are the single vertices. So now we're much better. So we've got quad, tri, quad, quad, tri, tri. That's much better there. Let's just check here. We've got a quad, a tri, and a quad. This is much healthier. So next I want to give the whole body some appropriate depth. All we've extruded so far are these lips. So before I do that though, I will need to come into object mode, and if you look, we've got an X rotation of 90 degrees, and that's going to be a little bit confusing with our coordinates. So over the viewport, Control A and apply the rotation. And now that rotation's gone away. So now the axes are going to be what we think they should be. So switch back into edit mode, select edges, select this loop here by alt-clicking on it. And then I'm going to move it out on Y. So G and Y and -0.5. And if we turn back on our subdivision, you see we've got something that's a little bit more 3D. So we will need to do quite a bit of finessing of the geometry around the bottom of the lips here. But first of all, I want to add a loop cut to the overall body. So like that. You'll notice it doesn't go all the way around. That's actually, I think, not too big a deal because it's not sort of violating any serious principles. And what that allows us to do is to have a slightly different edge profile. So I'm going to come to the side here. Let's turn on the move tool and let's just by eye move it out like that. So we've got that kind of profile there rather than that straight line. So we can up the subdivisions to get a better idea of how that's flowing around. As I say, it's a little bit constricted down here, and let's do a little bit of work on tidying that up. So let's just set the viewport levels down to 1, I think, or maybe even turn them off altogether like that. It's probably going to be easier. And I think what we need to do is move out the back edge of these lips. So let's come into faces mode. Let's select this face, and then just move them out like that quite a bit. Let's turn back on subdivision mode so we can see. But I'm also going to come into edges mode and do a little bit of finessing here, just selecting these outer edges and giving them a profile I like better. So I think actually I'm going to pull these out really quite a lot to kind of give this rather exaggerated kind of comical look to the front like that. Just want to make sure we've got a good curve, and up the subdivisions again just to check everything out. Sort of a bit dolphin-like, and I think that's kind of quite fun, really. So what I'd now like to do, I think, is move on and create the eye of the beast. If we turn on X-ray mode, we can see the eye up here. So to make the eye, I'm going to use a boolean. So let's come out of edit mode. Let's add mesh and cylinder. Let's come over and rotate it through 90 degrees on X. And let's just scale it down. Let's have a radius, I don't know, 0.1. Is that going to work? Move it over to here. And then let's adjust the scale manually. So with the S tool, just scale it up like that. So again, it's a long, thin tube, but we don't need to worry about the length because it's just a cutter. So let's just turn off X-ray mode. With the body selected, let's come to add modifier and choose boolean, and let's use the picker to select the cylinder. And let's turn off the cylinder just to see how we've done. So exact is again a little bit too exact, so let's just come to fast, and we've got a better result, I think, there. Now, I think what we need to do is we need to finesse the profile so the eye is a little bit flatter. So if we come into edit mode, and we'll need to turn everything on here just so we can see. So that's turning on this button here on the boolean, so it will display in edit mode. Also, I've switched to this last button here on the subdivision. How are we going to make this work? I think we can make it work by pushing this edge outwards. So select that edge there, and with the move tool, let's just move it out like this, and that is probably quite good because now the eye is almost completely flat. We've also got this kind of quite fun profile here, which I don't mind at all. So just, don't get stuck into one way of doing things. See what happens when you just try something. And one of the nice results I think we've got here is that he's got a kind of like a rather pronounced forehead like this. And that kind of gives him a bit of a kind of angry scowl, and I really like that. I think it gives him a lot more character than if he'd been round as in the original drawing. So never be afraid to go with your accidents. So I've done a little bit of renaming here, and one of the things I've done is to rename that cylinder as eye cutter, because what I want to do is I want to do the same thing as we did with the rotor assembly down here. You remember we had the rotor, and we used a cylinder first of all as a cutter and then as a kind of infill, and I want to do the same thing here with the eye. I'm not going to show you every step in detail because I've shown you that before, so I'm just going to whiz on through this and show you the end result. So there you go, that's our eye infill finished, and we can also fill it with a rotor just like we did with the base fin. In actual fact, why don't we just grab the rotor from that, so the gear down there, let's turn it back on again, select it, Shift D, and let's just now move it up into the eye socket like that, turn off the original gear, let's move this out into the main collection and just position it where we want it and scale it. So I think this is probably enough for part 3. There's still a lot more to do on the body, and we've obviously got to create this dorsal fin here and the internal cogs. And then there's this propeller and that propeller protection assembly and all that kind of stuff. So there's actually probably another couple of tutorials in this, and I think I'm going to stop there. So thanks very much for watching. See you again soon.